Peace, peace, peace. You are now tuned into the vault. This is your host, Sharif Ali. Just want to thank you for joining us live. Peace, good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. Just want to thank you for tuning in. If you're tuning in through the replay, just want to thank you all as usual for coming back for another awesome episode. Today we're going to be talking about how to separate your legal person from a natural person. It's a very important topic because there are a lot of people that are uninformed about this subject, and so I am here to shed a little bit of light on that today and go from there. So this is the Vault. We come on every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central Standard, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Just want to thank you for tuning in live. Today we're going to talk about how to separate a legal person, which is a social security number, from a natural person, which does not have any number tied to it at all, which is a very, very important thing. I just want to start out, as we always do, thanking the ancestors and the universe and the creator for bringing us here. It's always good to start out on a level of thanks, and just want to thank you all for doing that. It's really important that we do that. Once again, just thank you for tuning in. So it's a very important topic that I think we need to talk about, which is this: what's the difference between a legal person and a natural person? I think a lot of people have actually, it's a legal term called amalgamation, which means they've turned themselves into a legal person. But, this is a part of a control tactic and a mindset that has been developed in the public. There's two types of information. And when I was instructed in this information by my mentor, the first thing we learned is there's private information and there's public information. Just like there's a public corporation and a private corporation. A lot of people don't know how private corporations are set up, but that is how the community I come from, we're instructed on how to actually set up those private corporations and private entities. So it's a different level of information, a different lifestyle. And so when it comes to understanding the difference between a legal person and a natural person, you would want to understand that there's a difference between a public individual and a private individual. And so we're going to be going over that today. And the easiest way to start out that story is by giving you the information that in 1913, when the tax system was created, the income tax laws were created. The income tax laws were created for for legal persons. They were created for legal persons, which are legal fictions. Those are entities, okay? There's a difference between a natural person and a legal person, but a lot of people have, once again, like I said, it's a legal term called amalgamated themselves, which means they basically assimilated themselves or merged themselves into one. In all actuality, it's sort of like playing a game of Monopoly. You are not the piece itself. So your legal name is not your natural name. One of the ways to distinguish that is by looking at your social security card and seeing that the name is in all caps. And usually you'll see corporations or legal fictions in all caps, because that's not proper grammar. Proper grammar has uppercase and lowercase. And this is not to get too off track, but it is important for you to understand those basic grammatical differences. And even though sometimes you might see a legal entity that has an uppercase and lowercase, traditionally, even on the internet nowadays, when you put things in with upper and lowercase, it'll automatically convert it to a position of it will convert it to a position of all capital letters. The reason why it's in all capital letters is because it's an actual legal fiction. So 1913, when they created this income tax system, there were two tax forms that were created for wealthy people. Just remember that wealthy people put tax laws in place. It was not poor people, okay? So wealthy people put a tax system in place, and it was for individuals that were informed or uninformed, okay? So a legal person is a legal fiction, okay? And so when you go into commerce, you either have a legal person that's going to be considered you. That's why you check off self with SS4. And that information was given out by default, okay? Private families, once again, wrote the tax law. Rich people wrote the tax law. So it's in order for you to understand that that information that we're talking about today is very, very valuable to you and your family, because you've been given one set of information. It's called public information. It's not called private information. Private information is where people put entities in place to actually do business for them. And I'll give you a good example, and I'm going to do my best today to explain why is it that Donald Trump can legally sit in front of you and say he doesn't have to release his tax records because he doesn't use his Social Security to do business. He actually utilizes trust or other forms of legal fictions or legal names or legal persons, because a legal person or a legal entity is just a business. Okay, just like you do business with your social, or you want to do business with the social, it is a legal person. That is the classification of it, because it is a legal entity. It is not a natural entity. Okay, it wasn't born out of the natural status. It was born out of a commercial need. Why is it a commercial need? It's a commercial need because people are looking to do business with that entity in particular. It's all about commerce. It's all about business. A lot of people have mixed up their personal with their business, and that's the issue nowadays. So people don't understand the difference between personal and business. Everyone says, oh, I need to separate my business from my personal, but they don't understand what that really means. So in 1913, there were two tax forms that were created. They were created for informed families and uninformed families. So when I conduct my seminars and my training system for trustee training, the whole purpose is to put you in a position where you own nothing, control everything. See, the average individual thinks that they can own something. How can you own something you never created? The average individual didn't even create the Social Security number that they have. It was created by a third-party agency called the Social Security Administration, which is a trust, and that is an entity that's used to give out to people that can't take care of themselves when they reach the age of 65. So it gives them a thing called Social Security insurance. It gives them a handout. See, an informed family or wealthy families, when they put that tax law in place, they put that in place for individuals that either knew what they were supposed to know, or if you don't know, you were going to go out and get a Social Security number. So what you look like when you know what you need to know, you go out and you go get an EIN. It's called an Employer Identification Number. That's what an entrepreneur goes out and gets. A lot of people are bred to be employees because the system that they're trained in, once again, inside of a public system. When you come from a private learning system or a private education system like I do, you learn that it's all about entrepreneurship. It's all about your last name. It's not about your first name. It's about your family legacy. It's not about your personal, what you feel like doing this generation. It's about the furthering the family legacy. So the tax form that individuals will be filling out as an entrepreneur is, particularly if you're using yourself as a or if you're operating from a private capacity, you would be learning and knowing from an actual trust system. So that would be coming from a 1041 perspective. There were two tax forms that were created in 1913, which was a 1041, which is a trust tax form, which is still a legal person. Because trusts are a legal person. They can do the same thing you and I can do with the social, which is they can go buy and sell and trade property. The only thing that trust can't do, it goes out and vote. It can't go out and vote. So it's very important for people to understand it from that perspective. A lot of people are not familiar with that type of knowledge base because they haven't been given that type of knowledge base because they went through a public school system. See, trusts are private entities. They're not public entities. Even though there's public trusts that are created under statutory jurisdiction or a public jurisdiction, when you understand the United States Constitution and the way it's set up, it's created to protect private people's rights. We were all private before we were public. We were all natural before we were legal. See, you're a natural flesh and blood being, but you have to go apply for a commercial number to actually do business if you're uninformed. That's by default. So the reason why I'm doing this video is to inform families. I went a very long time in my life, till about my mid-20s, until I understood the difference between what a public entity is and a private entity. So it's very important for you to understand that as well. See, private people, they hoard knowledge. Public people just take knowledge and they use it or don't use it. Private people take information and they implement it and they hoard it. And that is why I've created private trustee training, is so individuals in the public can learn how to get out of the public and take themselves from a legal perspective of Social Security number status to an actual EIN status or a private status, because privacy exists. A lot of people think, oh, because we're on the internet, privacy doesn't exist. What are you talking about? If you go look at the average Fortune 500 company that's even on the internet, they still says they're a private corporation. It still says that they're a private entity. So that doesn't necessarily mean that privacy doesn't exist because it's on the internet. Okay? But back to the topic today, which is a legal person and a natural person, how to separate it. Individuals have to learn how to set up entities, okay? Particularly when you understand private knowledge, you understand that trusts are in place. That's why you hear a lot about trust fund babies. That's why Donald Trump doesn't have to report his taxes, because he's not using the social security number to do business in the public, okay? He's utilizing a trust, and everyone knows he's using a trust. They also know that he's using a foundation. They also know that most politicians are using foundations. They also know that they're all utilizing trust. Why? Because this is how the elite are structured in this country. Okay, they're structured utilizing legal persons that it might still even have their quote unquote natural name, but it's set up with an EIN, not set up with an SSN. See, an EIN is an employer identification number that gives them the opportunity to not be quote unquote known as the owner. Whereas if you have a social security number, that means you own it. That means you set up as a legal person. Okay, that means that you can be taxed for everything. That means whoever is insuring this entity, whoever is liable for this number and this entity, whoever is in the beneficiary position, they are considered liable tax wise. Okay, and everyone knows that the tax scale is different for legal persons with the social security number, as it's different for an entity that has a EIN. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows corporate taxes are different from individual taxpayer status. Why is that? They're both commercial entities. You know what I mean? Thank you, Black God Online. I appreciate you for shouting me out and saying peace to the chat. I just want to say thank you for everybody that's typing into the chat right now. Appreciate you all. We are live on YouTube and broadcasting live. Thank you all for joining me from Facebook and YouTube and other platforms. So appreciate you all. But point being is everyone knows that taxes follow title. Okay, so if you're liable for something, there's a lot of disadvantages from that, and one of the disadvantages is taxes. One of the disadvantages is that whatever is inside of that entity's control, quote unquote your control, you can be sued for. So that's why trustee training is so important. Is to help you learn to separate your legal person from your natural person, because your natural person can administer as many entities as you as you want to actually administer. It can definitely administer as many entities as it wants. A natural person can. A legal person is the entity itself. Okay, that's why they call it a legal person, or they call it a legal name. Think about it. A corporation has a legal name. The corporate name is the legal name. So what's the difference between that and the social security number? The difference between that and the social security number is that the social security number is one of the lowest numbers that you can have in commerce. And I know a lot of people haven't been educated on that, so they think, oh, I can do business even with my EIN if I have can I use my social security number to actually get an EIN number? And that's just not the best position to be in. Why is it not the best position to be in? It's not the best position to be in because, remember, whatever owns one thing is liable for it. So if your social security number, you keep using that legal person, which is the lowest number, trying to administer a higher entity, it's going to still end up reaping the quote unquote not advantages but also disadvantages of quote unquote ownership. Ownership is something that's very misnomered in the society right now. I know a lot of people they ask me questions about ownership. I know it's a big push for people to be entrepreneurs, but I'm a fan of entrepreneurship. I'm not a fan of ownership. Okay, because ownership equals liability. So when you're looking to go out and administer entities as a natural person, that's perfectly fine. But if you're looking to do that out of a social security number, which really is a welfare worker number, I mean, a lot of people don't know that the social security number is a entity. Okay, it is not you. It is a separate, distinct legal entity from your natural person. That is a mindset switch. Most of the average individuals walking around have been geared and programmed, because this is a system of programming, okay? That's why they call it a public school system. It is to program you. That's why they call it TV programming. It is a programming system to put you in a system of owning something instead of actually controlling stuff. Okay, the tagline that we use in our community and what I train our trustees to actually learn to do, which is to own nothing, control everything. You can control your assets just like you're controlling your assets right now by using the trust. Do you see Donald Trump missing out on the benefits of control? He literally has a jet. He has a helicopter. He has private penthouses. All of those things are owned by a private trust, okay? Those things are not owned by his social security number. Because you know how many people have sued this man? You know how many rich people can get sued or get sued on a regular basis? Okay? They put their assets, they give up ownership of their assets by putting them inside of a trust, and they control them. Okay? So a lot of people say, well, how is it that, these people are hiding their assets away and they can get away with, not having to report their taxes or X, Y, and Z? It's because they don't have any income to report. That's why he really doesn't have to release it. He's not pulling down any public monies. The monies that he's generating is through a private entity. That's the separation of legal person versus natural person. Your natural person is synonymous with private person. Your legal person is considered a public person. That's why they can go through and see all the money that you make. The government, quote unquote, can see all the money that you're making on the public side with your public entities. Whereas on the private side, they can't just go in. Do you see the clear separation? That is called power. That is how wealthy people operate. And that's a choice that you have to be able to make as a strong, cognizant adult walking around. You have to be able to have the mental fortitude to be able to say, I'm going to separate my wealth. I'm not going to have my wealth be snatched away from me. I'm going to work my whole entire life and have someone sue me because they slipped and fell inside of my store. And because I have my social security tied to the entity, I'm going to have it ripped apart. It doesn't work that way. So it's very important to separate your natural person from your legal person. You don't need to have, quote unquote, ownership of a legal person. A legal person, once again, can be a corporation. It can be an S corp, a C corp, a trust, an association. It's just an entity that you control to go out and do commerce. So now it's not on you as an individual taxpayer. It's on the entity as a corporate taxpayer or a trust taxpayer or a associate taxpayer or whatever tax liability is liable for that entity itself. Now you as the natural person can take advantage of a thing called fringe benefits. And that is something that wealthy people do. They take advantage of things called fringe benefits. That means their cell phone. That means their clothing. That means their food. That means their shelter. That means their travel. All those things are taken care of by the corporate entity. You all saw what happened when when you all notice, you all can Google this, corporations can plead poverty. Think about this. Think about what happens when an individual taxpayer goes through bankruptcy and the United States goes through bankruptcy. United States is in a bankruptcy right now. It's in a Chapter 11. You all know this. That's why the company's operating from a debt position. Because it is a legal entity. It is a legal person. And legal persons can claim poverty. Legal persons can operate off of debt still. They're going through a reorganization. That doesn't mean they give up all of their assets. It just means that they have to stick to a specific style of accounting now. For some of you all that have never gone through a bankruptcy. So just because a legal person has filed bankruptcy, it doesn't mean that it's a natural person. It just means that it's an entity. That's what it is. It's an entity. And entities have accounting that go along with it. Natural person doesn't have any accounting. An entity has an accounting. It has credits. It has debits. So that's very important for you all to understand when you're saying, oh, why can't I just go out and do business with my social security number? Well, first of all, it's not your social security number. You all can look at the back of the social security card and it says that this is not your card. And if any time that someone finds this card and it's not your card, you can send it back. Okay, you do not have to utilize that entity. That is why Donald Trump once again says he doesn't file taxes, because he's not using that card. He's not using that number. That doesn't mean he's not a U.S. citizen, people. Oh, he's still protected as a U.S. citizen, and I definitely want to be protected as one too, because ain't nobody dropping no bombs on the United States. Tell you that right now. So this is a very safe place to be a citizen of. But when it comes to you actually operating in commerce, which incurs some type of tax liability, that's where you have some freedom and you have some leeway. So you can utilize the system that's in place, which is called capitalism. It says you're supposed to open up a business, not become an employee. Because if you become an employee, guess what? We're going to tax you on a gradual scale. Whereas the corporate rate tax, you all know, that's flat. But then you get other people that know even more sophisticated financial knowledge. And that's dealing with trust. And that means that they understand they can pass on, the trust can pass on 100% of its tax liability to its beneficiaries. Okay? So that's the difference. So when you all are looking to operate, it's very, very important. I'll share with you all, since a trust can operate and pass on 100% of its tax liability to its beneficiary, did you know that an individual taxpayer can pass on 30% of its tax liability to a charity? Let me give you an example of what one of my clients just did recently, and you all can get a better understanding. Everyone, let's just say you all made $100,000 this year. That was gross. Okay? The 30% rule comes in effect. Well, guess what? We helped this individual set up a private family foundation. They're in private trustee training, so they understand how to administer their entities as a private trustee of their entity. Now, once again, I always want to remind you all rich people have foundations. So you see what we put make sure we put our families into? They get into a private family foundation. In turn, they are in control of the charity, okay, as trustees, okay? But these individuals as a couple, they actually are employees still. They still have jobs. Nothing wrong with that. They're still working. They're working their way to get out of that position. But they wanted to put charity in place because they love doing charity. In turn, they control that charity. They don't own the charity. They control the charity as a trustee. Okay? So they're allowed to take 30% of their job income and donate it to the charity. Because they're not donating it to themselves. They're donating it to the charity, even though they're trustees and they control the entity. So in turn, both of them, they basically just received the 30% tax deduction. That's a write-off. That's a complete 30% write-off. Even though they were taxed at $100,000, let's just say both of them made $100,000 each. That means that, one of them, in this case, they made $100,000. That means now they're tax liable for $70,000. Because legally, per the IRS, you all can Google this. Go to the IRS website, or you can Google, can an individual taxpayer deduct 30% of their income to a charity, not their charity, to a charity. Okay, and in this particular case, they're operating in trust, so it's the trust that they own, that they control as a trustee, and in turn, they just recoup 30% of that money back into a charity now. In turn, they're tax liable for what? They're tax liable for $70,000. That each individual is liable for $70,000. Just think about if you were able to control a tax liability. See, wealthy people have wrote the tax code. They know how to practice tax avoidance. I did an episode on YouTube here called Tax Avoidance versus Tax Evasion. There's a big difference. So when you all are looking to do business in the public, there are strategies that you can implement to practice tax avoidance. Now, do you think that people care or the government cares that you're practicing tax avoidance? I'm going to share with you why they don't care that these individuals that I'm talking about are doing tax avoidance. Why don't they care? Why? Because the government is nothing but a big charity. Well, didn't they start a charity? Yes, that means they got a 501c3 designation for the entity. The entity is there to help out the public. It's the same reason why the government's around. It's to help out the public. So it's not that 30% that they supposedly are using to avoid taxes. They're actually going to use that for some public good. It's for a public good. So when people say, oh, well, what if everybody practice tax avoidance? Well, what is the government going to be left for? It's not going to be necessary for them. There is some benefit to have a government for military purposes and things like that. But the government's not meant to take care of people, grown adults. And guess what? Why don't you do that? Why don't you help in your local community? Why don't more people help in their local community? Because they're dependent on the government. Instead of actually going out and creating charities to help out those entities in those local areas, or national areas, or international areas. So there's no disadvantage for the government, because why? What you're actually having those entities do is go out and do business as a charity. It's actually for the benefit of the public. It's to lighten the burden of government, because the government's got to take care of people if a charity isn't going to do it. So it's very important to get into private trustee training so you can learn how to live your lifestyle in a tax avoidance or a private trustee perspective, and then put yourself in a position where you can own nothing, control everything, where you can't be sued for anything personally. It's about separating your personal wealth from your business wealth. Everybody wants to own something because that's what they've been programmed to do. But that's not how business is supposed to be done in America. That's why the president of the United States is keep telling people, look, I don't own anything. That's why I don't pay taxes. But everybody want to walk around and everybody wants to be upset. And guess what? There are going to be many more presidents that walk into that cabinet and they're going to say the same exact thing. The only thing I can say about that particular party, because that's a party that's making a statement, at least they're upfront and letting you know. Where one party's trying to sit here and tell you that they're trying to do some public good, sure. They're all here to do some public good. It's called the government. But at least one party's letting you know, look, there is a thing called legal tax avoidance, and we practice it. Mitt Romney, when he was running against Obama, he said the same exact thing. He said corporations plead poverty all the time. I don't file a personal tax return. I don't pay taxes. I'm gonna share with you all how it looks in the public, even with traditional business owners, not just the government people. When you got traditional business owners such as Bill Gates. Bill Gates owned Microsoft. His social security number owned Microsoft at one point. You want to know how sophisticated he got? He got hit with an antitrust lawsuit. That was the first indicator. Okay? They try to say that these people that create these large entities that have trust in place, or they're using their socials, in turn, they're actually trying to create monopolies. Okay? Well, yeah, he got hit with an antitrust lawsuit that's dealing with trust. Once again, you see how it correlates? He got hit with an antitrust lawsuit. He took the maximum amount of time and the maximum amount of penalties for his personal money. But on the back end of that, at the end of the 9 years or the 7 years that he was in litigation, he came out with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation now receives his disbursements of monies from Microsoft Corporation. Let me point it out for someone more recent for you. The Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, he was the owner of Facebook. You all still think he's the owner of Facebook because he has the title of CEO and founder. No, he created the Zuckerberg Foundation, and now that receives all of the royalties, dividends, and profits from actually Facebook. This is not uncommon knowledge in the proper circles, but it is uncommon knowledge if you come from a traditional public education perspective. So it's, do you see how he went straight from his traditional business, just like those clients that I was telling you about, that they are W-2 employees and they went into a position where they created a foundation, and the foundation now, because it's for charitable purposes, to do charitable good and things of that nature. Do you see how Zuckerberg created the same style of structure? And that's what I have stepped out into the public and made it a point to share the knowledge, because it's important for us to get in a position where we are creating more charities for individuals. And helping individuals do more charity. I think that's very important. That's why I do what I do. This is charity for me. But I still love doing what I do. I still love helping people get in the correct position and practice tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal. So it's very important to get in trustee training. If you guys want to enroll in trustee training, it is open enrollment right now. You can email us at hfrn.vault@gmail.com. Once again, that's hfrn.vault@gmail.com. And like I say, this knowledge isn't for everybody. I can tell you right now, some of your best friends and family, they like being taxed on a gradual scale, want to be an individual taxpayer, and there's nothing wrong with that. When they die, they're going to die without a will or a trust in place, and half of their whole entire life that they worked the money for, what little bit they save, is going to go back to the government. Whereas individuals like the Trumps, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Kennedys, they're all going to pass on wealth, and they're going to, pass on that wealth tax-free. So when individuals think that, people aren't going to pass on that wealth, practicing tax avoidance, you're sadly mistaken. There are people that are passing on wealth generationally, and they don't go through any type of tax situation. And that's something that you all need to think about. I know a lot of people are scared of, the IRS and things of that nature, but, the IRS is a very friendly organization. I think that, there is a spookiness behind it. It's sort of like the boogeyman, it's sort of like the tooth fairy. You never seen the tooth fairy, but you hide your tooth under the pillow so you can give your kids money or so you can get a buck or two. You know what I mean? But we have to step out of spookiness. We have to step out of phantasmagoria, because last time I checked, there's a big difference between good health and bad health. And it's the same thing with finance. There's a difference between having sound financial information, a sound financial portfolio, a healthy financial portfolio, and having an unhealthy financial portfolio. And that comes from having the correct knowledge. So I look forward to working with you all in private trustee training. You all get into a private trustee event to learn how to administer your life and own nothing, control everything. Or you can continue walking around doing everything through your social and things of that nature. I do want to point out some benefits of using the social. So if you don't use your social to do business anymore, to collect what's considered income as an individual taxpayer, of course you're going to have it for a passport. Of course, you're going to use it for driver's licenses and things of that nature. But as far as collecting income on it, that's something that us as wealthy individuals, that's not something that we do. We don't collect income through social security numbers. That is the lowest number to collect money on. It's not even your number in the first place. It's the state's number. So why not put ourselves in a position where we have a foreign entity collect that money and, practice what everyone else is practicing when it comes to tax avoidance? That's a decision. I remember when I was younger, I used to always hear successful individuals I hung out with, they would always say success is a decision. You paying taxes is a decision. I just hope you put yourself in a position where it's legally okay for you to be doing avoidance and not evasion. We put ourselves in a position where we're not even ever held liable in the first place. So you have to put yourself in a position where you're not even held liable for taxes in the first place. Okay? So it's up to you all. I'm open to taking questions on the chat if you all have any questions. Once again, if you all want to enroll in private trustee training, hfrn.vault@gmail.com. If you all want a consultation to learn how to, if you have a corporation right now, some of you all might have an EIN with your corporation, and you probably use the social security number to actually get that EIN. Well, okay, did you know that we can change ownership? Did you know your entity can change ownership? It can change ownership. So you're not stuck in a position just because the social got the EIN. You can actually utilize the EIN and just put it in a different capacity, and everyone knows that. So you don't have to feel as though, I can't utilize the entity that I currently have. I'm gonna have to drop it or whatever. That's not the case. Okay? What we practice is asset separation, asset protection. Okay? And that's very, very important. Anything you own can be taxed to you. Anything you own can be sued for. Same thing with a public entity. So that's the difference between public and private knowledge. We focus on having individuals set up in private entities. Okay? The way that we practice that is by using Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, and even most of the common law jurisdictions in the United States, Article 1, Section 10. I am going to do an episode on contracts tomorrow, so if you all are linked up with me on my Facebook page, Sharif Ali, feel free to go to that page. I'm actually going to be doing and even on my YouTube, just be prepared tomorrow. Subscribe so you can actually get the notification when I go live. But I will be doing it's the secret weapon of the elite. So you all think that they have tax loopholes that they're using. They're not itemizing. They're not itemizing at all. It's an expense. It's either an expense or it's income. When you understand private contracts, there's no statutory limitations in private contracts. Why? Because in the private contract world, contract makes the law. They understand that. You can go talk to any contract lawyer. He'll tell you contract makes the law. Anything that me and you agree upon in the contract, no matter how unreasonable it is, the court is going to obey it. Why? Because they didn't create the contract. It's not under any statutory jurisdiction. But did you know inside of a contract you can create what jurisdiction it's going to be adhered to? See, this is the private education that the public individuals don't get because they're so focused on watching TV and going out and getting a public education. That's the power of private information, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen that listen to this information. So it's up to you whether you want to put yourself in a position to practice tax avoidance with your corporations, for even your children, to put them in a position. Think about all the taxes you paid throughout your entire life. What if you could have had that go into a charity and all you had to do was spend 5% of that every year now doing charity? Think about that. That's a powerful thing. You could have did a lot of good with that money. Think about what the government did with that money. Last time I checked, they're $19 trillion in debt. I'm sure they did a lot of good with your money. Do you see how wealthy people operate? They put themselves in a position where they can actually make a difference. It's up to you all whether you want to put yourself in a position where you can make a difference. And that comes from having the right knowledge, the proper knowledge base, a private knowledge base. Public knowledge in the community I come from is called controlled knowledge. Same thing when it comes to wealth building. There's a specific way and investment and strategy that we utilize to build wealth. And we don't do it the same way the average individual does. So not to be long-winded, I wanted to keep this on the Social Security number. Individuals think that their Social Security number is theirs. It's actually the Social Security Administration number. It was set up by a private organization, just like you all know that the Federal Reserve is a private organization. You all know that. It's not government. It's just the entity that's printing out dollar bills for individuals. There, you all can research this. Go and look up gold and silver certificates. Those were issued by the Treasury. The Treasury doesn't issue money. Not anymore. It's the private Federal Reserve. And they dictate how much money's being printed, how much money's not being printed, all this good stuff. That's why you guys deal with inflation. That's why you all know that your dollar's not as valuable as it used to be. That's why it doesn't buy the same amount of gas. That's why it's always fluctuating. The gallon of gas is always going to be a gallon of gas. But the price of it's going to change. Why? Because the money that you're utilizing is called a currency. It's not really a money. It's a currency. See, that's private information. That's a private education that you get when you learn how to utilize this information. Private people know that it's a currency. Public people say, oh, this is my livelihood. Oh, you know, just this money. It's inflation. That's just the way it is. Private people understand how to preserve and save their wealth. Not put it in and save it in a currency that's fluctuating by the day. Okay? So, I welcome any questions right now on the YouTube live chat. You feel free. I want to shout out, I don't know how to say this name at all, so please forgive me. But Daryl Gardner, shout out to you, brother. Thanks for tuning in live and saying what's up on the chat. If you all have any questions on the chat, feel free to ask any questions. Like I say, it's really important that you all separate your business wealth from your personal wealth. But if you don't, there's been many people that haven't, and I'm sure they enjoyed their life too. So it's up to you whether you enroll in private trustee training or you want to live your life and be taxed to crazy. I mean, I was laughing with a trustee earlier today when we were laughing how you're gonna pay taxes anyways. It's called state sales tax. You're definitely gonna pay taxes, even with property tax. There's nothing wrong with those taxes, but the income tax situation is what's killed most people, especially on the public side. Why? Because it's a gradual scale. Where you all know on a corporate side or i.e. on a private side. With more of an asset protection perspective, you're actually administering it from a arm's length distance dealing. That's what we call it, arm's length distance dealing. So that means that you're not liable for the taxes. The entity is. You can just take advantage of fringe benefits, cell phone, car and transportation, even grooming. Doesn't the company have to present itself in a proper manner? Yeah. So the individuals that are working for the company can be what? Can be administering it from a fringe benefit perspective. And that's very, very important. A lot of people don't even utilize fringe benefits. If you all have a corporation, an LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, I encourage you all to go and take the what? I can actually Google right now. And what I love about the IRS is they tell you how long it's going to take to read the publication. So publication 15B is what you would use on the public side. If you have an S Corp, C Corp, it's really the corporate fringe benefit publication, and they tell you right there. So it's something that you can talk to it's something that I recommend that you go and you read, and then you can go to your lawyer for your entity. Because look, I don't need to be a lawyer to talk about this. I'm an entrepreneur. I hire lawyers. We hire trustees. We hire CPAs. That's what we do. I don't need to be a lawyer to talk about entrepreneur topics. Okay? As an entrepreneur, you should definitely be thinking about your tax liability. And if you're not, that's fine. But if you are thinking about it, we can talk. So let's continue talking. So point being is, as an entrepreneur, you're trying to minimize your tax liability but still do some good. What you would do is you would read publication 15B and you would go to your lawyer and say, look, give me the best fringe benefit, give out the best fringe benefit operating agreement. You all need to have a quality operating agreement. If you all want to have a sample operating agreement, you all can email me at hfrn.vault@gmail.com and I can share with you all a sample operating agreement. Even if right now you want to Google an operating agreement, you can Google those things. But if you all want to see what a private individual uses, just some of one of the sample documents that we utilize as an operating agreement, you all can feel free email me or get on the email list at hfrn.vault@gmail.com and email me at the vault, and you all can get an operating agreement. I recommend everyone that has an entity or looking to start a business, you need to have a non-disclosure agreement and an operating agreement in place. That's very important. So an operating agreement is an agreement that the entity has with you as a natural person, so you can go out and take advantage of fringe benefits and things of that nature. So those things are available to you. That's what we do in private trustee training, is we make sure that you are administering the entities in a proper capacity, because that's very, very important, and doing what you need to do from a private perspective, not just from a public perspective. So it's very important to be able to do that. And learning the difference between a natural person and a legal person. A trust is a legal person. Did you know that? Your trust, or a trust that's set up on your behalf, that you're administering, can have quote unquote your quote unquote natural name and be utilized in the public, but have a completely different tax structure. It's just that simple. And most people think that that's something that is a big deal, is something that is illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. It's perfectly legal. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's very important for you all to put yourself in a correct tax position as an entrepreneur, and even as an individual, but not as an individual taxpayer, but as an individual, as a natural person. Put yourself in a correct tax position, or a better tax position. Or maybe that's not important to you. I don't know. But I want to share that information with you all. We do private trustee. I don't like calling them seminars, more of a workshop where you come in and you learn that information. We definitely have done those on the East Coast in Jersey recently. We did that in June in Jersey. We're definitely going to be coming out to the actual West Coast and doing it on the West Coast here in the fourth quarter. So I look forward to getting with you all, but as well, even down south in Atlanta or the Miami area, definitely going to be doing that. And even on the West Coast out in NorCal or Vegas or SoCal, just be prepared for me and my team to come out, and we got a team of accountants, we got a team of enrolled agents, we have a team of financiers, private equity holders. So when individuals are thinking about doing that, that's very, very important. Thank you, Trelly. Trelly's listening live. I appreciate you. She says this is very very good information. I appreciate you, and thank you for tuning in live. And we look forward to continuously developing our communities. What I'm talking about is not illegal, guys. This is something that wealthy individuals are practicing. The only difference is that they don't want to give it to public individuals, because public individuals want to own everything. So guess what? That means you're a liability. If you own something, you're liable for it. They don't like dealing with individuals that want to be liabilities. So they usually will keep this information between individuals that are private, so they can keep on administer the information, and they don't have to think about somebody being a liability and compromising their position in their tax structure. That's the bottom line. So it's very important for all of us to administer our estates, because ultimately this comes down to what's considered estate planning. A lot of individuals aren't familiar with estate planning because they don't think they have an estate. But as soon as you step out in the public, as soon as you step out in commerce and you start doing anything with Federal Reserve notes or dollar bills or gold or silver or any type of asset, diamonds, pearls, or collectible art, that's an asset and you need to protect it. But guess what? If you own it personally, you're liable. So it's very important to put yourself in a position where you own nothing, control everything. So individual in the live chat said, so I would need a specific language in my LLC operating agreement to apply fringe benefits for the operating managers of the entity. Yes, so that's something that, once again, by you having a sample of what an operating agreement looks like for a corporate entity, you can then go to a lawyer and talk. I mean, you are an entrepreneur. As a operator of a company, or the CEO of the company, you're the manager. So you can have a document drafted where you're in a position where you're taking advantage of fringe benefits to the max. Usually, if it's in a state, they have a state regulation on fringe benefits for that even state entity. So it's important on how much you can deduct as a corporate state entity. Okay. Or the entity can deduct in general. But that's why I do private trustee training, so you can come in and you can learn how to go out and talk to lawyers, because they work for you. You don't work for them. CPAs work for you. You don't work for them. So then you can learn how to talk to them and say, look, I need to have you have drawn up a more state specific operating agreement, or a more state specific bylaws, and things of that nature. So it gives you a sample idea so you can know how to go in and talk to a lawyer to get the best style of fringe benefits for that particular state, because it varies based off of state. Because LLC in Nevada is not the same as a LLC in Delaware, and Delaware is not the same as Florida, and Florida is not the same as California. So the fringe benefits in those states are going to definitely be different with the entities and what they allow you to deduct. But you definitely want to take advantage of having your entity classified as a corporation. That's another thing I want to speak on. For all you all that got your EINs for your entity with your social security number, if you have not sent in a specific document, and I will not go over that right now, if you all have not sent in a specific document to have your entity classified as a corporation, you all know what it is. It's called a sole proprietorship. That means you own it. A sole proprietorship is where you are looking to utilize a corporate entity, and it's called a disregarded entity. Okay, it's considered an alter ego. It's almost considered a sham, but sham doesn't mean like a bad thing. It just means a sham in the respect of on the public side. They just don't look at it as a separate, distinct legal entity. It's actually you just hiding behind corporate benefits and corporate shells. But if you wanted to actually be recognized by the IRS and your state recognizes it as a corporate entity because that's where you got it. You got the corporate entity from the state level, but the federal level does not recognize it as that. The federal level says, well, you use the federal social security number to actually get this foreign, it's not a foreign, you got this this federal EIN number, because the EIN number comes from the federal level as far as the IRS. And so it's very important for you to understand that it's considered a sole proprietorship, which means you own it. Okay, and that means that really you're still filling out the 1040. The average individual is not filling out an 1120 with a corporate entity. They're actually filling out a 1040. That means it's a social entity. So it's very, very important. Thank you, Yvette Gardner, for tuning in live. She said, when you coming back to New Jersey for round 2? Just be prepared. That'll probably be either late fourth quarter. It probably won't even be. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going back to the East Coast, Northeast region as soon as probably September hits or October hits, because it's going to be cold. And Sharif Ali does not do cold weather. I am of African indigenous descent, so I stay in warm weather. So unless you are booking a warm hotel and even clothing, almost, I might even throw into the consultation fee even clothing for that area. I will not be in the Northeast region, period. I usually like going to that part of the world during the summertime because I don't mind it. But during the wintertime, when it comes to cold weather or snow, I definitely will not be operating in the Northeast region of the United States. But I like warm weather. I do summer. I chase summer everywhere I go. Haven't done winter in years. So but point being is definitely will make it a point to come back to the Jersey. We did an event, if you all don't know, in Jersey in June. We had a great turnout with people, and it was a private trustee workshop, and just making it a point for individuals to understand how to administer their lives where they're owning nothing, controlling everything, and that's very, very important. So I definitely look forward to getting back with my team and making it a point to understand, once you get into the structures, how to utilize the structures, also how to finance and finance projects with the structures, because that's important. A lot of people are into their structures right now, whether it's a corporation or LLC, S corp, or a trust or anything. That's the structure, but they don't know how to finance the entity. So having our guys come out and utilize different strategies. I mean, there's so many different type of financing strategies that are, once again, are private information. You're not gonna, there's no need to even know the private information if you don't even have the structures in place. So that's the purpose of us having these private trustee workshops, is for individuals to learn the private information so they can administer their lives. So I just want to thank you all for tuning in live. I really do appreciate you all. If you do have any last quick minute questions, feel free to type that into the chat. But I do appreciate you all. Look forward to connecting with you all. HFRN_vault@gmail.com if you're looking for a consultation, or if you're looking to administer your life in a private trust, or even do it in a private charitable perspective. That's something that we can help you all do. I think that that's very important. It's all about wealth preservation. You have to know the keys to wealth, and that's protecting it, preserving it, growing it, and passing it on. And that means in the correct tax position. Okay. The reason why I'm coming so hard with this information right now is because you can see rich people are telling you in front of your face, oh yeah, I don't pay taxes. Why? Because they don't. They have their entities do that, but they don't own those entities. They're controlling those entities. And that's what we aim to put you in a position of, is put you in a position of control instead of ownership. So I thank you all for tuning in live. Feel free to subscribe to the page. I'm going to be going live every day in August, so subscribe so you can get the notifications when I go live. Go to the Facebook page, Sharif Ali. Go to the Facebook page of The Vault, and you all can catch these episodes. And I look forward to bringing you all more jam-packed information about entrepreneurship, not owning a business, but controlling a business. So I look forward to joining you all live. Thank you for joining us on how to separate a legal person, your social security number, from a natural person. I appreciate you all. Peace and blessings, and talk to you soon.